Once upon a time, tucked away in a valley surrounded by breathtaking mountains, there lay a charming little town unlike any other. It was a place filled with kind-hearted, cheerful folks who cared deeply for one another and for every living thing around them. Each morning, the crisp mountain air carried the sweet songs of birds greeting the rising sun. And every evening, when the sun dipped behind the peaks, a soft pink light wrapped the town in a warm, dreamy glow. This delightful town was also known for its many graceful and well-mannered cats. Among them was one truly distinguished feline named Clive, the undisputed leader of the town's cats. Clive resided in a grand wooden townhouse right in the center of town. He had claimed the top floor as his own cozy domain, where he lived under the care of his master. Like every cat in that tidy town, Clive wore elegant cat clothing, though none could quite match his sense of style. Clive was admired far and wide for his flawless taste, gentle manners, and polished appearance. His fur shimmered with rich shades of burnt orange, tangerine, and maple brown, while a soft, snowy white patch ran from his chin all the way down his chest and belly. Each of his paws was neatly dipped in white, giving the impression that he was wearing tiny socks, and the very tip of his tail was just as white and clean. Being a short-haired cat, Clive kept his whiskers neat and perfectly trimmed. He always knew precisely what colors and outfits suited each moment of the day. Often, he could be seen strolling through his townhouse in a pair of fine green tweed trousers and a matching jacket. On special evenings, he dressed to impress in a black tailcoat paired with a gleaming emerald bow tie. And when the mood called for something extra refined, he donned his favorite deep plum silk jacket decorated with a paisley design perfect for hosting elegant late-night gatherings. But that was just a glimpse of his splendid wardrobe. He also owned a pair of soft beige walking trousers, green galoshes, a polished ebony walking stick, and a fine black top hat. Yet, of all the splendid garments in his wardrobe, none were more precious to Clive than his luxurious blue silk pajamas. One sunny morning, Clive awoke feeling refreshed and content. He stretched his paws high above his head, let out a long, satisfying yawn, and began to daydream about what delicious breakfast might await him. Just then, rip! A small tearing sound broke the morning calm. Clive's ears twitched, and he glanced down in horror. His beloved pajamas had split. Mortified, Clive let out a sharp mew to summon his loyal assistant, Mr. Tibbles. Within moments, Mr. Tibbles, a fluffy white cat dressed smartly in an orange waistcoat, came scampering into the room, his soft paws pattering briskly across the polished wooden floor. One look was all it took for Mr. Tibbles to understand the situation. "Oh dear," he said with concern.
"It seems we have a tear." But the real trouble was Clive didn't have a single spare pair of pajamas. As he carefully stepped out of the torn silk, he sighed to himself, realizing this was entirely his fault. A cat of his sophistication ought to have kept extra sets on POW. Mr. Tibbles, ever the problem solver, suggested. "Perhaps we could fetch a new pair from the tailor's shop in town for tonight." But Clive shook his head firmly. "No, my dear Tibbles," he replied. "I cannot wear just any pajamas. Every stitch, every thread of my nightclothes has a purpose to ensure the most peaceful, dreamy sleep imaginable." He went on to explain the fine details. The fabric must be woven from the silk of the asterisk, sleepy silkworms asterisk, the buttons carved by the asterisk baron of dreams asterisk, and the thread spun in the asterisk temple of peace asterisk. Only then could the pajamas truly be worthy of him, and they always had to be custom-made. As Clive described all this, a spark of inspiration lit up his golden eyes. What if, he mused aloud, I were to collect all these special materials myself? It has been far too long since I've left town, and I know exactly where to find them. It would be quite the splendid little adventure. With a confident flick of his tail, Clive declared the plan. Come along, Mr. There's no time to waste. Prepare yourself at once. Before long, the two cats stepped out of the grand townhouse and onto the cobbled road. Clive was dressed smartly in his beige traveling clothes, while Mr. Tibbles looked rather dashing in his sturdy hunting jacket. Together, they set off on what promised to be a most delightful and dapper journey.
They trotted briskly down the cobbled street, their soft paws padding rhythmically against the smooth stones beneath them. A gentle breeze swept through the town, cool and fresh, brushing pleasantly against their whiskers as it carried the faint sense of morning life. The pair passed by the cheerful greengrocer arranging baskets of crisp apples, the elegant hat lady adjusting her latest display, the flower shop bursting with colour and fragrance, and the glittering windows of the jeweller's store. They couldn't resist pausing briefly outside the butcher's shop, where the delicious aroma of freshly baked sausage rolls drifted through the open door. Clive inhaled deeply, his tail curling in approval, before continuing on his way. Soon they arrived at the tram stop, just as a splendid red and gold tram rumbled gracefully into view, right on schedule. With the agility only cats possess, they leapt nimbly onto the rear platform and found a comfortable spot to settle in for the ride. The tram clattered along the winding tracks that meandered through the heart of the town. From their perch at the back, Clive and Mr. Tibbles had a perfect view of everything below. The town was peaceful and bright, people strolling slowly with shopping baskets, chatting happily in the sunshine. The air was mild, the light golden, and the whole scene hummed with calm, contented energy. As the tram turned a sharp corner, the great hill came into sight, a steep and lively part of town built along the mountainside. Every day, the tram faithfully carried passengers up and down its sloping streets, where the most curious shops and eccentric townsfolk could always be found. At the very top of the hill stood the town's proud observatory, its shining dome pointed toward the heavens. This was the home of the mysterious Baron of Dreams, whom Clive and Mr. Tibbles had come to visit. The tram climbed slowly upward, gears clicking as it pulled them higher and higher. Clive adjusted his jacket and gave his ears a quick, dignified flick, ready to make a proper impression. At last, the tram came to a gentle halt, right outside the observatory gates. The cats hopped off gracefully and gazed up at the remarkable building. It was small and perfectly round, made of deep red brick with a curved dome roof, crowned by a gleaming brass telescope that poked out toward the sky. Vines of ivy climbed lazily up its sides, curling around windows and railings. Without hesitation, Clive began to ascend the ivy-covered wall, and Mr. Tibbles followed carefully behind, doing his best not to glance down at the ground below. Near the very top, they reached a narrow little window, just big enough for a cat to squeeze through. Clive tapped on the glass in a series of precise, rhythmic knocks, a secret code only the Baron's visitors would know. In an instant, the window creaked open without a sound. The two cats slipped gracefully inside, landing softly on a thick, velvety carpet that covered the floor of a cozy, dimly lit room. Mr. Tibbles dusted off his waistcoat and looked around in quiet awe, his eyes wide with curiosity.
The room they had entered was a curious little place now, larger than a coat closet, yet brimming with wonder. The walls gleamed with a coat of shimmering gold paint, and the ceiling sparkled like a treasure chest, studded with hundreds of tiny glass beads in every color imaginable. When the morning sunlight streamed through the small window, it struck those beads and scattered a rainbow of dancing colors across the room, making it feel as though the walls themselves were alive and breathing. Behind the two cats, the window remained open, letting in a gentle mountain breeze. Before them stood a splendid golden throne, ornate and polished to perfection. Seated upon it was a very old and exceedingly thin cat, none other than the Baron of Dreams himself. His fur was silver gray and his eyes glimmered faintly like twin moons. You see, cat dreams are not at all like human ones. They are wild, mischievous, and often difficult to tame. That is why a baron was needed to keep every cat's dreams calm, sweet, and in order. The baron's whiskers quivered with delight as he saw Clive approach. It had been ages since the two old friends had crossed paths. Clive, ever thoughtful, reached into the pocket of his traveling jacket and produced a gleaming tin of the finest sardines. The baron's eyes lit up instantly, and he glided off his throne with surprising grace for his age. Clive carefully peeled back the lid of the tin, and soon the cozy little room was filled with the rich, salty aroma of sardine. The three cats settled comfortably together on the plush carpet, nibbling their treats and chatting about all the latest news and gossip from around the town. Who had moved into which garden, which kitten had learned to climb the tallest fence, and which baker's windowsill had the best smell of pie. When the last sardine had vanished, the Baron gave a satisfied purr and rose from his seat. He turned to his golden throne and opened a hidden compartment beneath it, rummaging around with his slender paws. After a moment, he drew out a small velvet drawstring bag and handed it carefully to Clive. "These," he said in a hushed, dreamy voice, "are my finest dream buttons. Sew them into your garments, and they will bring gentle, happy dreams every night." Clive bowed his head gratefully and tucked the bag into his jacket pocket. Then, with a polite farewell, he and Mr. Tibbles climbed back out through the window. This time, however, instead of descending, they padded lightly up along the curve of the observatory's domed roof. When they reached the very top, they paused to take in the breathtaking view. All around them stretched the majestic mountains, their snowy peaks gleaming under the sunlight. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine and distant meadow flowers. Clive inhaled deeply, his fur ruffling in the breeze, and scanned the vast landscape with sharp, observant eyes. Then, in the distance, he spotted a patch of deep green nestled at the base of a nearby mountain. It was a small forest of emerald-colored trees, the very place where the legendary sleepiest silkworms were said to spin their silky threads. That was where they needed to go next. Always the planner, Clive reached into his jacket and pulled out a neatly folded package. With a deft flick of his paw, he unfolded it into a compact parachute. Mr. Tibbles' whiskers twitched nervously, but Clive gave him a reassuring smile. "Don't fret, old friend," he said calmly. "This parachute is built for two." Moments later, the pair stood poised at the edge of the dome, the parachute stretched between them. Mr. Tibbles held one handle, while Clive held the other. They linked their tails together for balance, exchanged a confident glance and took a deep breath. Then whoosh, they leaped gracefully off the roof. For a few exhilarating seconds, they glided through the cool mountain air, fur rippling in the wind. Then Clive gave a flick of his paw, and Mr. Tibbles followed suit. With a satisfying snap, the parachute billowed open above them, carrying the two cats gently down toward the forest below, their next grand adventure waiting just ahead. The parachute billowed open with a soft whoosh. Catching the mountain air and lifting gracefully. In an instant, Clive and Mr. Tibbles found themselves drifting gently through the sky, floating in perfect peaceful silence. Beneath them stretched a breathtaking sea of mountains, towering peaks blanketed with lush trees and shimmering shrubs that swayed rhythmically in the cool breeze. The cats gazed in wide-eyed wonder, taking in the beauty of the landscape below. The air was crisp and fragrant, and the view stretched as far as their eyes could see. Slowly, the parachute began to guide them toward the very forest Clive had spotted from the observatory. The trees below glistened in the sunlight, all glossy pines packed close together like an emerald carpet covering the mountain's base. As they drifted lower, the tips of the trees reached up to meet them. The parachute brushed softly against the pine needles, and Clive and Mr. Tibbles felt the gentle tickle of branches beneath their paws. With perfect timing, they released the parachute and landed nimbly in the upper branches of a towering pine. But this was no ordinary pine tree. This was the legendary silkworm tree. Every branch shimmered with life plump, contented silkworms wrapped snugly in silky cocoons. Each worm was hard at work, spinning delicate threads that sparkled in the dappled sunlight. The tree hummed with soft, soothing sound like the whisper of fabric being woven by invisible hands. The sight was a marvel. The silkworms came in every color of the rainbow, radiant magentas, fresh greens, buttery yellows, deep oranges, inky blacks, fiery reds, and pristine whites. Some gleamed silver or gold, and together they made the entire tree look as though it had been decorated with shimmering, oversized Christmas ornaments. Clive's sharp eyes scanned the dazzling display until they landed on one particularly plump silkworm nestled close to the tree. Esse trunk. Its cocoon glowed a pale blue, exact shade of the early morning sky, and, unlike the others, it wasn't spinning at all. It was fast asleep, softly snoring in its silky cradle. "There," Clive whispered, "the sleepiest silkworm of them all." The two cats crept skillfully along the sturdy branches, balancing with feline grace as they wove their way closer to the trunk. When they finally reached the sleeping worm, Clive gave a polite little cough to announce their presence. The silkworm stirred, blinking groggily at them with drowsy, half-open eyes. Without a word, Clive reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small packet of the finest, richest ground coffee, a gift no silkworm could resist. The moment the worm caught a whiff of it, her eyes brightened and her drowsiness vanished. With a delighted hum, she disappeared into her cocoon for a moment and re-emerged holding a neatly folded sheet of exquisite blue silk, the very color of her cocoon. Clive accepted the gift with many grateful nods, placing the silk carefully inside his pocket while the silkworm hugged the coffee. With joy, the exchange complete, Clive and Mr. Tibbles gave a courteous bow before making their way down the tree with care, branch by branch, until their paws touched the soft forest floor. The ground was blanketed with fresh, springy grass that felt cool and comforting beneath their feet. Mr. Tibbles looked around, ready to ask where their journey would take them next, but before he could speak, Clive raised a paw and said softly, "Listen, who's listen?" He listened as intently as he could, letting the sounds of the forest wash over him, the rustle of leaves, the distant chirping of birds, and then there it was, a soft, cheerful asterisk, babbling asterisk sound, like laughter made of water. It was a stream, bubbling merrily somewhere nearby. Clive's ears twitched too, and he gave a pleased nod, confirming Ed heard the same thing. Without a word, he began padding gracefully toward the sound, his tail flicking with purpose. Mr. Tibbles followed close behind, their paws sinking gently into the soft forest floor as they moved between the towering pines. The air was cool and earthy, filled with the scent of pine needles, moss, and crisp mountain water. Before long, they came upon the stream. It wasn't large, just a narrow ribbon of clear, lively water that danced over smooth pebbles and tiny rocks. The sunlight flickered between the trees, catching the ripples and scattering sparkles of light across the surface, as though the stream itself were laughing. Clive's sharp eyes scanned the forest until they landed on a broad-leaved plant nearby. The leaves were thick, shiny, and waxy, perfect for what he had in mind. He plucked 2 of them, carefully, one for himself and one for Mr. Tibbles, and handed the second over with a small, knowing smile. "Hold on tight," he sighed softly, placing his leaf onto the rushing stream and watching it bob lightly upon the water like a tiny boat. Mr. Tibbles followed his lead, setting his own leaf afloat. Then, with an elegant hop, both cats climbed aboard their makeshift vessels and began drifting gently downstream. The journey was calm and mesmerizing. The stream wound through the forest like a silver ribbon, carrying them smoothly along. The air was filled with the sweet scent of water and pine, and the gentle songs of birds echoed in the distance. Every so often, the treetops parted just enough to let shafts of golden sunlight pour through, warming their fur and making the whole scene glow like a dream. They floated quietly, neither speaking, just taking in the peaceful beauty around them. Eventually, the stream widened and curved around a bend before spilling out onto a small, gravelly shore. Their leaf boats glided to a graceful stop at the edge of the bank. The 2 cats leaped lightly onto dry land, taking care not to let even a single drop of water touch their paws. What lay ahead took their breath away. At the top of the small beach stood a temple, simple yet striking, built entirely from smooth, rounded stones stacked carefully, one atop another. The structure radiated calm, and the air around it seemed to hum with quiet serenity. Clive and Mr. Tibbles stood for a moment in respectful silence, feeling the peaceful energy of the place. Then, without a sound, they padded toward the temple and stepped inside. Instantly, the world seemed to hush. The air was cool and still, filled with the faint, soothing scent of incense and rain. "This," Clive whispered reverently, "is the asterisk temple of peace, asterisk. Clive let out a soft, melodic hoot toward the graceful owl, and she answered with a gentle echoing call of her own. It seemed the two were speaking in their own quiet language, sharing some secret understanding. After a moment, the owl gave a delicate click of her beak and cooed in a soothing tone. Instantly, a flurry of miniature owls each, no larger than a tennis ball, appeared from the shadows of the temple ceiling. They fluttered down in graceful swirls, their wings whispering softly as they circled the two cats. Clive's eyes twinkled. With a smile, he reached into his coat and brought out the soft blue silk and the glittering buttons they had collected on their journey. The tiny owls wasted no time. Some pulled out shiny silver tape measures and began taking Clive's measurements with impressive precision. Others nipped at the silt, cutting neat pieces with the sharp edges of their beaks, while a few more pulled down long strands of glimmering thread from the top of the temple to sew everything together. Clive stood tall and still, his paws stretched out as if posing for a portrait. The owls chirped quietly to one another as they worked, removing his travel clothes and gently arranging the soft pieces of silk around him, stitching them neatly into place. Mr. Tibbles watched in wide-eyed amazement, unsure whether to laugh or run. But before he could decide, the owls began fluttering toward him too, measuring, cutting, and sewing with quick, clever movements. Clive chuckled warmly as Mr. Tibbles froze in surprise, his tail twitching. Before long, both cats were standing proudly in the most splendid blue silk pajamas imaginable. The fabric shimmered under the temple's soft light, smooth and cool against their fur. The little owls circled them once more, adjusting collars here, fastening buttons there, and making sure every stitch was perfect. Finally, when the very last of the Baron's golden buttons had been sewn in place, the owls gave a harmonious hoot and fluttered up into the high-domed ceiling, disappearing into the silver shadows above. A peaceful stillness settled over the temple. The cat stretched, letting out long, contented sighs. The silk pajamas felt unbelievably soothing, cool against their fur, yet wrapping them in a sense of calm. A wave of drowsiness rolled over them both. Mr. Tibbles blinked sleepily and asked how they were supposed to get home, but Clive only yawned, his whiskers twitching lazily. "We'll think about that later," he murmured. "Right now, it's time for a nap." Mr. Tibbles didn't need convincing. He was already rubbing his eyes with his paws, a sleepy smile forming on his face. Clive lay down beside him, smoothing his whiskers and stretching his paws with satisfaction. He was overjoyed with his new pajama, soft, beautiful, and perfect for rest. The two cats curled up on the smooth temple floor, their tails wrapping snugly around their bodies. They folded their paws neatly and let their ears relax. Warmth and comfort surrounded them, melting away every trace of adventure. With one last deep, slow breath, they closed their eyes. Their eyelids grew heavy, their bodies sank deeper into the quiet stillness, and soon they drifted away into a gentle, dream-filled sleep. In their dreams, they floated once again on leaf boats, down glimmering streams, soared above snowy mountains, and gazed at the endless twinkling stars that dotted the night sky. And somewhere, far beyond the clouds, the Baron of Dreams watched over them, smiling softly as his little adventurers rested at last.